No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no dentist, no mouthwash, no fluoride, no floss, no little travel-sized tube in a hotel bathroom. And yet, for most of human history, teeth were doing better than yours are right now. That's not a guess. That's not a nice thing to say about the past to make you feel better about your dentist bill. That's what the skeletons say, and skeletons don't lie to make you feel better about anything. So somewhere between no tools at all and a supermarket aisle full of options, something was actually working, and it's not what you'd expect. Every human who has ever lived has had the exact same problem in their mouth. Food gets stuck between the teeth. Bacteria move in and eat the leftovers. The bacteria produce acid as a waste product. The acid slowly eats into the tooth. This hasn't changed in 300,000 years. The bacteria doing it today are, biologically speaking, doing the same job their ancestors were doing in a Neanderthal's mouth. What's changed isn't the problem. It's what people did about it. And for most of that time, the answer wasn't nothing. The earliest evidence of someone actively doing something about it isn't even from modern humans. At a site called Krapina in modern-day Croatia, archaeologists found Neanderthal teeth roughly 130,000 years old with fine parallel grooves worn into the sides right at the gum line. These aren't chewing marks. Chewing wears teeth down from the top. These grooves are on the side, running in one consistent direction over and over for years. Something was being dragged between those teeth on a near-daily basis: a grass stem, a bone splinter, a stiff piece of sinew. Nobody knows exactly what, but somebody for years was picking at the same spot in their mouth on purpose. That means someone was already treating tooth discomfort as a problem worth solving before our own species had even fully arrived. Fast forward, and the tool gets more deliberate, and it gets a name: the chew stick. The method is almost embarrassingly simple. Take a twig, often from a specific tree, like the areca tree native to the Middle East and parts of Africa, and chew one end until it frays into something close to bristles. Then scrub it across the teeth and gums, the same motion you'd use with a brush today. Here's the part that makes this more than a curiosity. This wasn't a rare, isolated trick invented once and forgotten. Versions of the chew stick show up independently in Africa, across the Middle East, in India, and in China, separated by thousands of miles and, in some cases, thousands of years, with zero contact between the groups doing it. Different continents, different climates, different diets. Same solution, arrived at from scratch, over and over again. When that many unconnected groups land on the same answer independently, it's usually a sign the problem was universal and the fix actually worked. And some of the trees people picked weren't neutral choices. The areca tree specifically contains natural compounds with mild antibacterial and abrasive properties. So the toothbrush wasn't just mechanically scrubbing food away. It was also quietly doing some of the chemical work a modern toothpaste does. Purely because of what tree it came from, nobody in that period understood bacteria. Nobody could explain why one tree worked better than another. They just noticed, generation after generation, that it worked and kept doing it. That's the entire mechanism behind an oral hygiene method that some populations still use today, unchanged, right now while you're watching this. Ancient Egypt took the idea a full step further, and this is where things start looking uncomfortably familiar. Around 5000 BC, records describe a paste-like mixture made from crushed rock salt, dried mint, dried iris flower, and grains of pepper. The ingredients were ground down into a fine powder, mixed with a bit of liquid into a paste, and applied to the teeth with a finger or the frayed end of a stick. It was not gentle. Rock salt is abrasive. Used daily over a lifetime, some of these early pastes almost certainly wore down enamel faster than they'd like. An early trade-off between cleaning power and long-term damage that, honestly, some products still haven't fully solved. But look at what they were going for. Clean the teeth, freshen the breath, treat sore or bleeding gums. That is functionally a toothpaste, a specific formula made in batches, designed with a clear purpose in mind. Roughly 4,000 years before anyone thought to put a version of it in a metal tube and sell it in a shop. And Egypt wasn't alone in reaching for a paste instead of just a stick. Ground charcoal, crushed eggshell, powdered pumice. Different regions were experimenting with their own abrasive, purifying mixtures, each one arrived at through trial and error, no chemistry involved, just centuries of does this make my mouth feel better or worse. Here's the part that breaks the story you'd expect. You'd assume the timeline goes. Primitive people, terrible teeth, decay everywhere, and then tools slowly improve things until we arrive at the gleaming modern bathroom cabinet. Steady progress. Straight line, happy ending, that is not what the skeletons show. Bioarchaeologists studying hunter-gatherer remains, populations with no chew sticks, no powders, none of the tools described so far, keep finding the same surprising thing over and over. Remarkably low rates of cavities, sometimes strikingly low compared to almost every population that came after them. Not because they were cleaning their teeth better. They usually weren't cleaning them at all in any deliberate sense. It's because they weren't eating the thing that causes most tooth decay in the first place. Large, steady amounts of soft, starchy, sugary food. Then agriculture arrives. Grain becomes the backbone of the diet. And dental health gets measurably worse. Not better, right at the exact moment tools and techniques were becoming more sophisticated. Stone ground flour left tiny particles of grit baked directly into the bread, and that grit wore teeth down mechanically every single meal. On top of that, a steady diet of carbohydrates fed exactly the bacteria responsible for decay, giving them a constant fuel supply they'd never reliably had before. So picture the actual timeline. Tools are improving generation after generation, and the diet, at the very same time, is working directly against every single one of those improvements. Two forces moving in opposite directions, in the same mouth. So the real pattern isn't ancient people had bad teeth and gradually invented their way out of it. It's stranger, and it's layered. Diet, more than any tool, determined whether a population's teeth held up. That's the dominant factor, underneath everything else. Tools were a genuine functional response on top of that. Chew sticks, abrasive pastes, toothpicks, all of it doing real mechanical and even chemical work. And independently invented across cultures who had no way of comparing notes, and civilization, when it eventually arrived with agriculture, cities, and stored grain, didn't automatically make life better in every category. In this one specific, very personal category, the health of your own mouth, it made things measurably worse. At the exact moment the tools available were getting more advanced than ever. Three separate forces, pulling on the same 32 teeth, and only one of them was under anyone's direct control. You have a toothbrush with a built-in timer, toothpaste with 6 active ingredients listed on the box in a font too small to read, mouthwash in 3 flavors, a dentist on speed dial, and a reminder text every 6 months. And you probably still eat more refined sugar in a single week than most hunter-gatherer populations saw in an entire year. The tools didn't fail you. They're better than anything Egypt or Krapina ever had, by an enormous margin. The diet just got so much harder to outclean that the tools are constantly playing catch-up against a problem that used to barely exist. Ancient humans weren't beating you with better technique. They were starting from a diet that gave their teeth a lighter fight to begin with. Rock salt, dried mint, and crushed iris flour ground into powder and worked into a paste with a fingertip. Applied by hand daily for cleaning and for breath, roughly 7,000 years ago, which is one way to put it.